Soon I'll write that letter I know I'll never send, when all habitual dalliance will finally end. Then crustiness, my friend and foe, to oblivion you will go, belonging to tomorrow, belonging to tomorrow. Soon I'll make that journey out to Paradise Falls, and on all the stifling lethargy time will now be called. Then Crastinus, the snake-eyed schmo, to Gehenna town you will go, belonging to tomorrow, belonging to tomorrow. Prevail. Then Crastinus, bringer of woe, to the darkest darkness you will go, belonging to tomorrow, belonging to tomorrow.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Sunday Night Live at Johnny Lipson Studios. Hope everybody is doing well and had a good week. I hope you can hear me all well and good. Yeah, I had some complaints that my mic audio is a little bit low. I have turned it up quite a bit, but Studio One is a little bit louder than my mic, as you can tell. And if I turn the broadcast up anymore, I will be clipping like a mad barber with a set of razors, so we don't want to be doing that. So so it is what it is, and I don't really think I can get it a whole lot louder, so I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I hope everybody is having a good week and all of that fun stuff. If you are here and you are new, then certainly please do come and say hello in the chat. That would be very, very cool. And I will try and get to your messages as soon as I can, and hopefully I won't miss too many either, because I know I've got my little laptop over here. It basically, Chrome and Studio One and OBS at the moment, Chrome particularly likes to use up rather a lot of my RAM, so it makes kind of doing what I want to do with demonstrations and stuff in Studio One, it's making a little bit awkward. So that's why I've got the laptop over here, but it does mean I'm having to kind of like turn around quite a bit to try and read your messages, and then of course it's just a little bit too far away. But I'm gonna just scroll, if I can find my mouse pointer. There it is. And we're gonna see who is here in the chat. So Roger Blevins was the first one. He said evening, and Diego Kelly Winters is here, Dooley Still, and who else is here in the chat? Let's go take a look and see who else we got. Samuel Edwards is here. He says, good evening, everyone. Digging the music very much. Well, that's very kind. Thank you very much. Yes, that was the title track to my EP from 2016, Belonging to Tomorrow. And that one was a little bit of a different song for me. It was a little bit stepping outside of my comfort zone. I like to work with chord changes predominantly, but that song was not really a chord changes kind of song. It was much more a modal kind of song, in the sense that it didn't really have any chord changes, chord progressions that we would normally associate with a song. Instead, I based everything out of a single scale that I then shifted up into 3 different keys. But it's essentially all the harmony was driven from this, picking out notes from this one scale. And then I just transposed it up into 3 different keys for each of the verses to basically ratchet up the tension for the song. But I also wanted to avoid a conventional groove. So that's what I did. I kind of took a drum and bass groove and then slowed it down quite a lot. The interesting thing about drum and bass grooves is they tend to have their origins in bebop drumming, which is really quite fast and frenetic, you know, kind of tempos in excess of 250, 300 beats a minute. So the whole idea of breakbeats, it came out of a combination of listening to bebop drumming and also taking funk grooves and then just randomly slicing them up. And that's why they call it breakbeats, because you're breaking a beat up. So that's essentially the idea behind those kind of patterns. So what I wanted to do was to avoid a sense of a conventional groove for this song was kind of take that idea, slow it down a bit to this kind of tempo, and then just deliberately avoid playing a backbeat on 2 and 4. So what keeps the sense of forward motion? It's the ride cymbal, it's the pattern on the ride, the constant ding 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 ding, which in itself is a little interesting rhythm, because it's a 3-beat pattern that goes across 4/4 bars. So it's kind of like almost like a rotunda. It kind of like tumbles over itself, that little ride pattern. And so that's kind of like where I went with the song. I decided to set myself some challenges to take myself out of my songwriting comfort zone of straight pop beats and straight ahead traditional standard jazz harmony, and into something much different. So that's kind of where that song came out of. So that essentially is the summary of tonight's talking point, which is breaking out of your comfort zones. So stretching yourself musically, exploring ideas and concepts that you've not hitherto explored before. So maybe avoiding a conventional beat, or maybe avoiding the same set of chord changes that you use in every song, but maybe changing it up a bit, or even trying a different key that you wouldn't ordinarily write in. So, you know, a lot of you guys might be guitar players, so maybe you write in E, A, D, and G predominantly. Change it up a little bit. Maybe try writing a song in F or in B flat or something like that, and kind of see where that takes you. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about tonight, is exploring the idea of making something unconventional and yet still making it sound like you and still making it sound cool. So, which is what I kind of did with Belonging to Tomorrow. It still sounds like me. If you'd heard any of my other songs, it still sounds like me, kind of my kind of song, but it's a little bit different. There's no backbeat to it, and you know, I've deliberately avoided playing 2 and 4 on the snare drum, and constantly you've got this little kind of interplay between the kick drum and the snare drum, and there's a lot of things going on between the ride cymbal and the snare drum quite a lot, and the kick drum plays just kind of like occasionally. So that's what I want to talk about tonight, and feel free to contribute in the chat, because I would love to hear about kind of ways in which you are either have already kind of gone out of your comfort zone, or ideas that you are considering to get yourself out of your comfort zone and writing something that's a little bit less conventional for you. We could have a really, really cool discussion tonight about that kind of subject area, and maybe it will leave you at the end of tonight's show with kind of like some inspiration as to what you might do. So I'm going to, my contribution really is going to be kind of like pulling together your conversation strands in the chat, and also, of course, any questions that you have about how you might accomplish some of these things, but also perhaps even demonstrating something in Studio One that we can do rhythmically to create something that is unconventional but yet really works really, really well. Okay, so I mean, another thing you might not have explored before, maybe all of your songs are in 4, so maybe try writing in a different time signature. Maybe try a song in 6/8, or maybe 3/4, or maybe something even more unconventional, like an odd meter like 5 or 7 or 9 or 11 or 13 or whatever takes your fancy. So that really is going to be our discussion point. So let's go take a look at the chat. And Martin Weeks is here, and he says, hit the like button. Yes, please. BTN Studios is here. Hey, Bill. And he says, I sure tried that with the HST challenge, but it was an epic. You know what? That HST songwriting challenge is an absolute beaut. It's a doozy of an idea. And I'm glad, really, really glad we came up with it, because I know for a lot of you that on its own was kind of like stepping outside of your comfort zone. For those of you that were not on the Songwriting Simplified show on Wednesday, here is the challenge in a nutshell. Essentially, what we asked you to do was to write a song, but instead of having to write your own lyrics, we sent you to your kitchens, to your appliance manuals, and to page number 7 of whatever appliance manual your hands first fall on. And basically the first sort of few lines of that page, those are your lyrics. So that was the challenge. Now, you're probably wondering, where did that come from? Well, actually, I wish I could say that it was an original thought of mine, but it isn't. And that's mostly because I don't have very many original thoughts. So they are a rare occurrence, and usually we have a large party to celebrate the fact that I've had an original thought. But in this instance, it comes from drama classes that I took when I was at university many, many years ago. We're talking like 24, 25 years ago. And yeah, 25, 26 years ago, blimey. So long ago. And so I did these drama classes, and one of the things we had to do was quite a lot of improvisation, where there's no script. You know, there's maybe a scenario given and maybe characters given, and so that's your scope. Those are kind of like your boundaries in which you improvise, kind of like, you know, saying to a sax player, right, here's your chord changes and the style of the song, now blow on those chord changes. So in a similar way, in acting, you have a similar thing, kind of like you have your scenario and your character that you have to play and other characters that might be in that scenario, and you improvise your dialogue, and you know, kind of like you follow wherever the scene goes, essentially. So in those improvisation classes, one of the things we did was I can remember the class really quite vividly. We had 2 hats, and you had to take a ticket out of each hat. The first one was a book number, and there were 5 books. We didn't know what those books were, but there were 5 of them, and each book was sealed inside an envelope, so you couldn't see what the book was. And each envelope basically just had the number of the book written on the front of it. So the first thing you did was you rummage around in that hat, you pick out a ticket, and that's your book number. And then you go to where all the books are, and then next to the books is another hat, and in there you have to pick out a page number. So you pick out your page number, and then so you then go to that book, you open the book, and you turn to that page. That's your dialogue. That's your script. And so we were given a scenario after we had received our dialogue, and usually hilarity ensued, because, you know, kind of like the juxtaposition of the scenario and then the completely random dialogue that you had to insert. So basically you set the scene, you start with some just open improvisation, and then the teacher would buzz a buzzer, and each time the teacher buzzed a buzzer, you had to get your lines from your book in from that particular page. So that's what we did, and so that's where that challenge came from. So let's go take a look at another look at the chat and see what we got. Ray Hunt is here. He says, hello everybody. Hey Johnny, awesome upgrade to the live video. Yeah, thank you very much, mate. Yes, I have a super fast internet now, and I have a second monitor, which makes using OBS just an absolute breeze, because I'm not having to guess what's going on. I just need to figure out a way in which I can get the chat into a much easier to look at position. Martin says, can the tempo in Studio One be set pretty much anyway, like if I wanted to do something in, say, 7/4? Yes, you can. I can show you that. Just give me one little second whilst I get that particular scene ready. So if you look at the Studio One screen here, and we go down to the bottom where it says timing here, you can change that to anything you want. So at the moment it's in 4/4, so you click the first number and that gives you 4. So let's say we pick 7, which is what you picked, and now the grid is set to 7/4. But let's say you don't want it in 7/4, you want it in 7/8. That's fine. You click the second number and you see you got these options here. You got 2, 4, 8, 16 and 32. So let's say we want to do something in 7/8. So we set it to 7/8 and away you go. So now the grid is set to 7/8, so you can hit record and you can record in 7/8. And you can change time signatures at any time. So let's say your first 4 bars are in 7/8. Let's say when you get to bar 5, you want to change to 4/4. So you right click on the timeline and you go insert time signature, and we go 4/4 and we go OK. And now from this point the grid goes to 4/4. But let's say when we get to bar 13, so the end of bar 12, we want to go back to 7/8. So we right click again, we go insert time signature, and we scroll this up to 7 and we select this to 8 and we go OK. And now this section is back in 7/8, and it will stay in 7/8 until you tell it to change back. So I hope that helps, Martin. And I'm going to go back to my other screen. There we go. So I hope that helps. Let's see. I need to scroll back up the chat and see what we got, because I'm sure after that some people said some things and I missed it. So yeah, so Martin, hope that answers your question. Bill says, I not only tried to write a short song, but I tried to do a rap. Oh, you tried to do rap using loops and make it short. Maybe I tried too many things at once. Well, you know, that it's always worth experimenting with such things, you know, because the whole idea of this exercise was basically just to see what you come up with. There is no fail. You didn't fail. Nobody failed. It was a challenge basically to stretch you, to make you try something you've not tried before. You know, it was in many respects kind of a little bit random, but there's no right or wrong to it. There's no fail. There's you know, whatever you did is whatever you did. Now, you know, to your ear, you might say, I could have done better. Maybe I did X. Maybe I did too much of this. Maybe I did too much of that. And that's kind of what you're saying here in the chat, Bill, that you're already self-assessing and deciding that actually, if I was to go back and redo this, I would change X, Y, and Z. Perfect. That's exactly what the challenge was designed to get you to do. The challenge was designed to get you to try something new, try something you've not done before, and then assess and see how well it worked or how well it didn't work, and what you might do differently next time should such a challenge come up. So, you know, you've done well. You've done right. Okay. Let's see. Dooley still is here. He says, I bet you haven't tried Bill's Bonanza Beat. Okay. Diego says, how do you change the tempo without stretching the audio of the tracks? How do you change the tempo without stretching the audio of the tracks? Well, if you don't want to stretch the audio of your tracks, you have to do it in the inspector. And again, I'm being silly, and I'm not showing my Studio One screen. So okay, we need a track. We need a piece of audio in here. What can I put in here? What can I put in here that will just serve as okay, let's just do a loop. So let's go, we want to change this back to 4/4. Let's change everything back to 4/4. So let's change our default tempo, our default time signature rather, back to 4. We change this back to 4. And then we will go here and we will remove time signature. We'll go here and we will remove time signature. So now the grid is back to normal. So let's, the tempo here, the default tempo is, I'm hoping you can see this. Yes, you can. Good. Okay, the default tempo is 110. So let's say I grab, what's this one like? Okay, hang on just a second. Let's try this. Okay, these are way, way, way loud. And there's a massive, great big ringing floor tom in this, but that's okay, it serves our purpose. Let's grab this, let's drag this into Studio One. Alrighty, now let's open the inspector because we're going to need to do that. Now, if I go back to the beginning of this, now that I've brought this in, let's set up our loop actually. So let's set this up to there. We'll have a little loop on. And what we'll do is we'll put the click on and we'll play the track and see, you know, what this sounds like. Okay, let me just adjust the volume of this because that's way, way, way too loud. Let's try that. Okay, so you can see that this this piece of audio here is a lot slower than the tempo of the song. So it's not going to stretch unless I tell it to. So if I put this in time stretch mode, and now the little cogwheel appears, which has processed this, so it's made it faster to fit the tempo. Okay, so that fits perfectly now. But if we don't want to do that, then we can set it into follow or don't follow modes. All right, so you just have to just turn this tempo thing from time stretch to something else other than time stretch, and the piece of audio will be at whatever tempo it was recorded at. How do you find out what the tempo was that it was recorded at? You look in here where it says file tempo here. this piece of audio was recorded at 85 beats per minute. So we know that that's the tempo of this file. But if the tempo of the session is faster or slower, unless you change this here, it will always play at 85 beats per minute, this piece of audio. And everything else will be at the other tempo. Okay, so that's kind of how that works. If you want the two to match, that's what you need to do. You need to change this to time stretched. Okay, hope that helps. And let's go back to this screen here. So Diego, I hope that helps you. And oh crikey, this chat just massively jumped. I'm gonna try and get it back. Bobby Beard with the $2 donation. Thank you, buddy. Really appreciate that. Let's see. I'm trying to find where we were in the chat because it's jumping about all over the place here. And Scott is here, my good friend Scott over in Australia. G'day, mate. And he says he made it. Yeah, thank you. We had a really good chat, actually. I think it was in the Persona Studio One group. And it was really, really cool, mate. I think it was. Peace Valley Audio, that's my good friend Mike Neighbor. He says, I consider myself a composer, not a songwriter. I just can't write lyrics. One practice I have been working on is writing melodies in different keys. It's harder than it sounds. Yes, it is harder than it sounds, because you have to take into account different accidentals, things like different sharps and different flats, depending upon what key you happen to be in. So if you're writing an E flat, you're going to have to make sure that every E is flattened, every B is flattened, and every A is flattened in order for the key to make sense and to be discernible as a major key. So yeah, that is harder than it sounds. Let's see. Martin says something and I can't read it. Martin says, thank you. How does the time changes affect loops and the like playing Mai Tai or Presence? If you're playing Mai Tai and Presence, they are their instruments. So anything you record in on those particular time signatures will be recorded at that particular time signature. Drum loops and things like that. If, let's say, I have my song in 3/4 and I bring in a 4/4 groove into a 3/4 song, you're going to get what we call a hemiola effect, because your 4/4 groove is going to be 4 beats in its bar, and yet your song is 3 beats in its bar. So they're going to have that, you know, kind of like an effect where it's always shifting 1 beat until eventually the two line up again. So you may have to slice and dice, which I can show you how to do. Because actually that's pretty straightforward to do. In fact, yeah, we could do that maybe with this pattern here. So if I set this to time stretch, and let's change the time signature of our song. Let's change it to 3/4 just for funs. Okay. So now let's listen to this pattern, which is still in 4, but our metronome, I'm going to edit this metronome just to make it a little bit more obvious where the 1 is. We are going to put a cowbell on the 1, and we're going to keep everything else as it is. And that will make sure that you always hear where beat 1 of every bar is. Check this out. See where you got to the beginning of bar 5? That's where the 3 beats in the bar and the 4 beats in the bar they met up, and you got the 2 downbeats happening together. So that's going to be your problem. So you're going to have to cut and slice this drum beat until you get something that works, that is usable. So what I might do, oh hang on, you're not seeing this at all. I forgot. Sorry about that. So you heard that. You heard what happened. We had this loop, which is I didn't want to put a marker in there. which is the groove that we had to start with, but our song tempo timing is time signature is 3/4, but this loop is a 4/4 loop, and as you heard, the two don't fit. Yeah, the two don't fit. So how are we going to make this fit into 3/4? You're going to have to chop. It's the only way it's going to work. Or find a drum loop that is a three beat loop beat and bring that in. But none of these are. All of these are 4/4. So I don't really have an option here. So let's have a look at this first bar. Okay. I can 1, 2, 3, and I can cut right at the start of bar 2, and I can delete everything else. Doink, gone. So now we've got ourselves a 3-beat pattern. Okay, now if I was to duplicate that a few times, let's try that. Hang on. Okay, I think Studio One is getting confused. That should have worked. And now it's refusing to play the loop at all. Okay. Let's undo all of that. Okay, let's try duplicating that again. Hello, hello, hello. We have an issue. When I duplicate the loop, it refuses to play. That's very irritating. But anyway, I think you get the idea that that's what you need to do. I don't know why Studio One is behaving like that. I think there may be a bit of a bug there. So I hope that Presonus will address that. I'm pretty sure they will. I'm sure they look at all these kind of things. I'm sure that this will be addressed as in an update probably. But I think you get the idea. So I think you get the idea. So I hope that helps. So yeah, so if you're working in a different time signature and your loop that you really like is in another time signature, you're going to have to chop it up and make it fit, basically. But you want it to fit logically, and you want it to have some continuity and some flow. So you need to kind of listen out carefully. Now, if it's a bar of 5 and you've got a loop that's in 4, you can maybe take the first beat of your 4-beat loop and copy it and tag it on to the end of your loop, and then bounce it to create one bar of 5, and that'll give you some kind of continuity of the loop, and then then you've just created a 5/4 loop out of a 4/4 loop. So you can do all sorts of kind of creative stuff like that just with some creative chopping and then bouncing is what I would suggest you do. Okay, let's have a look. Let's see what I've missed in the chat. Paul Lucas says, Johnny, is there a way to look up a loop file that has been used in a track to its original library? Is there a way to look up a loop that has been used in a track to its original library? Good question. I would suggest you could probably find the answer to that in the pool of the song. So when you are in Studio One, and let's say this loop we've used, I think if you go to the pool, it should have its tag here. But let's say you've edited this tag to say something else, like a little bit more logical, like drum loop or something like that, or drum loop 1. Let's say you've got several drum loops. This would be drum loop 1. Then I think what you do is you go right click and show in Explorer. And I think it does it there, I think. I don't know, I've never actually done it before, but that would be my guess. Okay, That would be my guess. I'm not, as I say, 100% sure, but I'm fairly confident that that is where you would want to look. Okay, so I hope that helps. Bill says, you just like him because he's a Scot. Everybody likes Scottish people, don't they? I thought we are universally liked as a people. Martin says, classroom. Yeah, I know. Martin says, get me some custard pie. I'm not quite sure what you're going on about there. Yeah, okay. Paul says, thanks. It sounds easier than what I was doing. Okay. All right, so there you go. I think I've caught up with the chat now. All right, so I hope all of that helps, those the answers to those questions. So getting yourself out of your comfort zone. How might we do that? Well, for me, I just like to do things different than I've ever done them before. So I think about, you know, how I write my songs. And I think about, you know, what have I done in the past with my own songwriting, you know, kind of what styles have I used before? What styles have I never written in before? Or what keys have I never written in before? And then I just go ahead and try something out. Or, I mean, let's say, for example, I don't think I've ever written a bossa nova before. It would be quite fun to do that, actually. So I might well do that, to be honest. That might be something that I might do, is write a bossa nova sometime. You know, kind of Antonio Carlos Jobim style bossa nova. So that's something I've never done before. Or I don't think I've ever written a heavy metal tune. And I certainly don't have the vocal ability to do screamo, but that could be quite entertaining. In fact, what would be for me really entertaining would be to write something that that has really kind of soft and gentle lyrics about something sweet and schmaltzy and nice, and then do a screamo death metal song with those lyrics. For me, that would entertain me. I don't know whether it would entertain anybody else, but it would certainly entertain me. So that's kind of what I do to stretch out my comfort zones. So why don't you guys post in your chat things that maybe you either have done or are considering doing, so that your next piece of music is something a little bit different or has elements to it that you've never tried before. That could be quite fun for us to talk about. Didi says, can you play Smell of the Song We Missed, please? If this was out of your comfort zone. Smell. Oh, do you mean some? Do you mean you want me to play some of that song? I can do. I'll play a little bit of it. I mean, you heard it at the intro. If you weren't here at the beginning of the show, then you wouldn't have heard it. But I can maybe play just a few seconds of it. Particularly as I was describing kind of like how the drums work, I can play maybe just the first little bit of it.
Soon I'll write that letter I know I'll never send, when all habitual dalliance will finally end. Then crustiness, my friend and foe, to oblivion you will go, belonging to tomorrow, belonging to tomorrow.
then we change key here.
Soon I'll make that journey.
Now notice when I change key, I didn't do a 2-5-1, did I? So I think we started in G. So we kind of start on a kind of vaguely G7 thing. It's kind of a Mixolydian mode thing, this whole song. So basically taking the white notes from G to G. And that's kind of like the basis for the whole song. So any of the chords that I play, they're not major chords or minor chords. You know, they're kind of like all derived from just picking a few notes out of this. So, you know, kind of like doing things like... you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, they're not major chords or minor chords, really. So when I went up into the next key, you know, we finished back on that. And then we just go straight up into the... We just leapt straight up into A flat. So no 2-5-1s, just going straight up into the next key. And the same for the third verse. So what part of this song was out of my comfort zone? Lots of it. Not using regular chord changes was one. Just basically deriving any chords from picking notes out of that scale. And then, you know, when you shift up a key, you shift the scale up a key as well. And then the third verse goes up into B. You shift the scale up a tone to B flat. But again, deriving the chords out of that scale. Everything was built around basically one scale shifted up 3 times. So it's kind of like, for me, kind of like I fixed a limitation. I couldn't use chords. I had to use a scale and make it interesting. So that was, for me, that was a fairly hefty challenge. And then avoiding beats 2 and 4 with the drums. You know, kind of like, you know, boom, bat, boom, bat, boom, bat. Avoiding that. So never have the snare drum play bat on 2 and 4. And never have the kick drum playing on 1 and 3. Or 1 and then the and of 2 or whatever. Just, you know, keeping away from standard drum beats, drum patterns. So those were my 2 kind of like enforced restrictions upon myself to make this song work. And then kind of, actually what I found is that just opened up a whole bunch of things I could do that were just unconventional. So like the horn arranging that you heard, you know, though that was actually the last part of the song that got written was the horns. So we've got like a muted trumpet, we've got a flute, we've got a flugelhorn and a tenor saxophone. That's the horn section for this song. So what makes that work? Well, the flute and the muted trumpet just sound really good together. The flute kind of enhances the brittleness of the sound of the muted trumpet, and then the flugelhorn's nice and warm, and has got a nice warm full mid-range to it, and then the tenor sax kind of like just fills out the bottom end just a little bit. And then you just voice them nice and close together, and then occasionally you spread them out a little bit and you give them maybe different things to do. So maybe I'll have the muted trumpet and the flute take a little bit of melody, and the flugelhorn and tenor sax play some harmonies. So, you know, those were kind of the restrictions I imposed upon myself to make this particular song work. But again, it was stretching out my comfort zone, doing something I don't normally do, avoiding regular patterns, avoiding regular chord changes. So I hope that kind of answers that question. Martin says, very nice groove there. That's one of the things I've always liked about Little Feat. They had amazing rhythmic counterpoint going on. Yeah, there is a little bit of rhythmic counterpoint. But if you notice, the rhythm section by and largely are just doing this. They're just basically going. You know, there's not really a lot of rhythmic counterpoint there. So the Fender Rhodes... the piano and the bass are doing that. The Fender Rhodes is kind of like playing something a little bit different, and then the guitar is just playing little arpeggios to just kind of fill the sound out a little bit. So really the counterpoint is all happening within the drums. It's the ride cymbal, the constant little dancing between the ride cymbal and the snare drum. and the snare drum played at a very low volume. So, and actually that was a challenge for my drummer on the day, because he'd never played this kind of thing before. He's used to playing backbeat stuff, you know, funk and you know, playing really kind of strong soul power backbeats, you know, that's his thing. And I said, no, you can't do that on this song. No backbeats. No, don't hit 2 and 4. Avoid it. You're gonna have to just kind of like do this little kind of dancing thing between the ride and the snare drum, and just keep the volume kind of nice and low and make the whole thing shimmer. And he for him, that was out of his comfort zone, because he'd never done that before. And the result was we ended up with a really, really tasty drum chart at the end of it, because he found that by stepping outside of that comfort zone of his, which was kind of like funk and soul and R&B, and into this kind of other thing, he found himself just being really, really creative with you know, little polyrhythms going on between the ride and the snare drum and the kick occasionally. I mean, the kick is mostly going with the bass, but not always. So, you know, that's mostly where the rhythmic counterpoint is. Let's see. Dooley said something that I missed. Hang on. That I would like to get. Dooley says that chord progression makes me think of Zappa's Early Mothers a bit. Yeah, I love Zappa. Zappa has a really, really, or had, I should say, a really, really cool, fascinating. He had some really interesting harmonic ideas, some of which he borrowed from classical music. He listened to a lot of people like Bartók and Tchaikovsky, and took a lot of his harmonic ideas from there. But I mean, he was a genius, really, to be honest. Zappa was just a bona fide genius, and yeah, probably misunderstood in some respects by a lot of people. But yeah, I would have loved to have got the chance to go and see his band, particularly when a young certain Vinnie Colaiuta was in the band. That would have been phenomenal, with Mike and Randy Brecker and Dave Sanborn in the horn section. That would have been something else. Let's see. Toto's song Rosanna is another example. Drums are in 4, but with amazing accents, while bass is doing something a bit different, and so on. Rosanna is a great tune, because it's kind of a shuffle. It's kind of like a halftime shuffle for most of it, until you get to the kind of bridge into the chorus, where it goes a little bit more kind of double time shuffle, and then it relaxes back into the halftime shuffle again for the chorus. And again, there's lots of push and pull with the rhythm going on. It's a great song. The great Jeff Porcaro, the late great Jeff Porcaro, played drums on that track. It's one of my favorite drum grooves. Let's see. BTN says another way to get out of the comfort zone is to try writing a song that has a different lead instrument. Oh man, the chat just went absolutely boing right in the middle of reading that. Another lead instrument than your primary. That's why I use loops instead of writing on my guitar. That was, you see, that was a really, really great creative decision that you made there, Bill. Actually, was going, okay, normally I would do some guitar. I would write primarily on guitar, but I'm going to use loops instead. That's a really, really cool creative decision to make, and I'm really looking forward to listening to a few more of the challenge songs, because I know there's been quite a few entries so far. Johnny and I are going to go through them all, and I think we're going to give it another week to run, so that it gives people plenty of time to have a think about what they might do, and get them submitted. And as I say, there's no right or wrong about that challenge, about, you know, what you actually end up doing, what you end up with. There's no right or wrong about it. It's more kind of like, I'm really interested to find out what happens when people, you know, have like completely random lyrics that have been given to them, and how they set those really random lyrics to music, especially as I chose, you know, household kitchen appliance manuals as kind of like your libretto, so to speak. I just think it could be quite funny, and that's, you know, I'm sure everybody has kind of gone down that road. Hey, this is funny, let's just make it funny. Let's see. Martin says, Day at the Dog Races by Little Feat. Yeah, Little Feat, I don't really listen to a lot. My dad likes Little Feat. He's got a few of their records. I'll go hook up with him and check those out. Zappa could hear when the band's speeding up. Yeah, you know what? A good band leader always can hear when the band is speeding up. If he can't hear it, and he gets swayed by the band's tempo, then he's not a good band leader, to be honest. And I have worked with some pretty shoddy band leaders who, you know, they don't hear when the band is speeding up or slowing down. I've worked with a good number of big bands over the years, and usually it's the brass. No disrespect to brass players if there are any watching, but my experience has usually been that brass players tend to rush their figures, and when one person rushes, the others start to rush, and before you know it, you've got like whole trumpet and trombones are just rushing ahead, and here's me, the drummer, who has to lay down the law in the big band, fighting them to stay in tempo. And really the musical director, the guy conducting, should be stopping the band and saying, no, brass, you're speeding up. Hold it down. Listen to the drummer. Hold it back. Yeah, a good band leader knows when their band is speeding up and when they're slowing down. And a good band leader should also know what everybody else is playing. You know, be that a rock band, a funk band, a soul band, an orchestra, a wind band, a brass band, whatever ensemble he or she is leading, they should know what everybody else is supposed to be playing, and when they're supposed to be playing it, and how they ought to be playing it. And if they're not doing that, then he needs to lead and direct them to do that. That's what a good band leader should do. Martin says, glad you chose the kitchen. I grew up with stupid toothpaste commercials. Dee Dee says page 7 sucks. Which manual was it you chose, Dee Dee? I'd love to know. I'd love to know which manual it was you chose for yours. We've just moved house, so there are actually a good number of manuals I could choose. Now, when I originally did this challenge in 1993, it was a little bit more convoluted. We had to write a short 10-minute kind of opera. Not a kind of classical opera, but maybe like a rock opera. Improvised, based upon the instructional manual that you had to use for your lyrics. So I kind of like improvised like 3, I think, different types of different styles, different tempos of songs, chucked them together, and I built this story around. I think it was. I didn't get page 7. I think I got page 12. I can't really remember what page. I think it was page 12, which is kind of like instructions on cleaning the oven, cleaning the microwave oven. And it had like suggestions of how you ought to clean it, and certain products that you might use to clean it. So I decided, okay, they're suggesting products that they make to clean their product. So I thought, why don't I make this into a little kind of, kind of make these cleaning products into characters. So that's what I did. So I roped in 4 or 5 of my classmates to play a different product. So they were the character of a different product, and I turned it into this kind of like slanging match over which product should clean what. It was hysterical. It was so funny. And then of course the sponge got amorous with the spray cleaning product. And it just got hilarious after that. I think I must have been drinking way too much at that point when I wrote that. Bill says the only manual I could find, because if I'm not going to read them, why keep them? Well, exactly. Was the manual for my OneView IP camera. Oh, cool! A camera manual. Oh, that's going to be great. Dooley says, DD, you sound scared to get out of your comfort zone. Yeah. When you're first writing something that you've not written before, that is in a style that you've never written before, or whatever kind of challenge you've set yourself, it is a little bit scary. But the thing you need to remember is that whatever results is your song, and it's your work, and nobody can tell you that that is right or that is wrong. It's your song, and that rhymes, and it wasn't meant to, but it does. So somebody use it in a song, please. So, there's a challenge like this. There's no right or wrong about it. It's just kind of like, just do it. Try it. Your first attempt is maybe not going to be as good as your 29th attempt or your 30th attempt. By the time you get to your 50th attempt at writing a song based out of a kitchen appliance manual, it's probably going to be epic. It might even be a commercially successful hit, and nobody knows it. Nobody realizes that it's an appliance manual lyric. But, that was the whole point. The whole point was not to do something that is right or wrong or successful or a failure. The point was to try. That was the whole point, really, was to try and just have fun with it. And make it silly. Martin says, oven cleaner. The smell of it also frightening, and it takes the grease off like lightning. I'm telling you, it ain't no joke. Let it soak, let it soak, let it soak. Very good, Martin. Bill says, can you write a song about righting a wrong without going too long? I like that. Oh man, I've thought of another challenge. A 30-second opera. It can be a rock opera. It doesn't have to be a classical opera. But yeah, a 30-second musical, maybe. And it has to feature all the kind of cliches that you find in a musical. Kind of like you can go as pastiche Andrew Lloyd Webber as you want. That could be hilarious. Just writing a 30-second opera has to make sense as well. You have to have characters that make sense. So even if they only have like 2 words each, it has to still make sense and tell a story. That would be really, really hard to do, I admit. But it would be hilarious, the result. So maybe I will suggest that as a future songwriting challenge down the road. Yeah, that could be really quite entertaining. So we've had about 14 people in here today, and I was going to show you a little bit more about how you can chop up loops and create something really creative in a different time signature. And I was going to do something in 3/4. But unfortunately, there appears to be an issue with loops and duplication that has prevented me from doing that. And I have actually, whilst I've been talking away, I have actually been checking, and I believe that might actually be a known issue. So if it is, it will be resolved pretty quick, I would think. So with that, we are at 1 o'clock, guys and girls. So with that, I think we're going to end the show. And I'm going to say thank you very much for coming on. This show goes way too fast for my liking. And if my Sunday Night Lives are something that you really like, and you'd maybe like me to do a longer show, then please do drop me an email at johnny@johnnylipshamstudios.co.uk, and if there's enough support for that idea, then maybe I can schedule one where I do actually go a little bit later into the night. It's 1 a.m. here, 7 o'clock in the Central Time Zone in the United States, and it will be 2 a.m. in Central Europe. So it's pretty late for me and for my European friends. But yeah, I would like to do a longer show if I can, and get more stuff packed into it. Now that I'm a little bit more settled in my new house, just so that you know, there's going to be a lot more new content coming out now. I've not done any videos in probably about a month, mostly because I've been, we've actually spent this whole month kind of trying to find a new place to live, then packing, and then moving in and unpacking and trying to get things settled. And of course, it's been summer holidays with my kids off school, so I haven't really had time to do any, but I've got a whole bunch of ideas. I've got a list of maybe about 30 or 40 videos that I'm going to be making. So those will be starting to drip feed out maybe once a week or 2 per week. I haven't really decided how it's going to go yet. Once my kids are back settled in school, I'll get back to making those kind of videos. And of course, if you have any suggestions for videos you would like to see made, or a particular issue you would like me to unpack in Studio One or to do in mixing, then by all means, again, email me at johnny@johnnylipshamstudios.co.uk, and I'll get those videos made and get them up on the channel. If you go to the link below, if you are not already a subscriber to my email list, go ahead and get yourself signed up. You will get the stems to Chanel from my 2016 EP Belonging to Tomorrow, which you can mix yourself, and you can use that in your portfolio of work. I'm happy for you to do that. So you'll get those, and you'll also get a whole slew of emails. I've actually been a little bit kind of slow with getting emails out to folk, but there are some things coming, some major things coming in the works, which I will be emailing about very, very shortly, and my email list are always the first to know about new developments. So get yourself on that email list if you want to have the heads up information. And of course, my email list always will get first option into any new products that I put out there. They'll get the first chance to purchase before they go public. So again, another good reason to get yourself on that email list. All right, folks, and with that, we are going to say a very good night to everybody, and probably this week I will be doing another short stream. I know I normally just do Sundays, but I'm probably going to do another one that's going to be a little bit early in the daytime for my European friends. So with that, folks, I'm going to wish everybody a very good night. And if I can find the right button, there we go. I will see you all very soon, folks. Take care and good night.
And to paradise falls, and on all the stifling lethargy, time will now be called. Encrusted the snake-eyed schmo, to Gehenna town you will go, belonging